In the previous lessons on concept cells, we learned about cells in the hippocampus and surrounding medial temporal lobe that responded to people like, say, Jennifer Aniston. And what was interesting is it didn't kind of matter the exact visual details of the picture. If it had Jennifer Aniston in it, the cell fired. Here's a Halle Berry cell discovered, and notice it also responded to her name. And these kinds of cells would also respond to somebody saying the name. So the auditory stimulus of somebody saying their name. These came to be called concept cells. They were stimulus specific. They were multimodal, and they showed invariances. They didn't care much about the details. It was as if they just were responding to Jennifer Aniston in all her forms, or Halle Berry in all her forms. Interestingly, one of the researchers tested his own picture and was able to find cells in some patients that responded to him. Now that's interesting because he would have maybe met the patient a day before, and so what we have here are cells that are rapidly tuned, and that suggests a fast learning system, and that makes sense. In the hippocampal system, if it's involved in episodic memory, episodes are occurring in real time, and we often, see something once and can remember it for a lifetime. So that means that the system is able to learn quickly and establish a long-term memory from one learning episode. To investigate this more, they set up the following experiment. Now they're going to be recording from hippocampal cells and neighboring cells, and they're going to cycle through a whole bunch of stimuli to try to find the preferred stimulus. So they show a picture of Kerry Walsh here, a volleyball player, not much activity. So they cycle through a whole bunch of pictures, and they do find a stimulus, the White House, that does generate lots of activity. So the White House comes to be the preferred stimulus compared to, say, all the other pictures that they tried. Now, what they wanted to know was whether you could get this neuron that preferred the White House, whether you could get it to also fire to Kerry Walsh by simply associating Kerry Walsh with the White House. Now, how do you associate Kerry Walsh? You present composite pictures like this. It's as if Kerry goes to Washington. She goes to the White House, you take a picture. Like this would be an episode. You might have been there when she was there and you took a picture, right? Like an episodic memory. It might have happened once. And the question was, would that hippocampal neuron that previously had a preference for the White House, would it also show a larger response for Kerry Walsh? And sure enough, after the training episodes with the composite picture, the cell increased its activity to Kerry Walsh. Remember, initially, Kerry Walsh was a non-preferred stimulus, but after training, we get an increase in activity. So this happened after one training trial sometimes. So episodic memory formation requires fast learning. Sometimes it's just one episode and we can remember it for a lifetime. Now these altered preferences that they discovered here in this experiment may reflect such changes at the neuron level. So here we have a neuron that initially has one preference, and it's changing as a result of the association between the preferred stimulus and a non-preferred stimulus. Now, some of these researchers argue that these concept cells are an important bridge, in a sense, between the perceptual systems and the memory systems in the brain. So they're going to be instrumental in setting up semantic memory, our knowledge of the world. Let's go back to the Luke Skywalker example. So the idea is that there is perhaps a sparse population of cells that selectively respond to the Luke Skywalker. But some of those cells might also respond to the Yoda, and some others might respond to Darth Vader. Why? Because Luke Skywalker would have been sort of learned in association with these other characters. If you were watching the film, then you're going to be having an episode where all three of these are involved. And so to the extent that there's an overlap, it allows the neural system then to link these different people, different characters, different concepts in our semantic memory network. And that's a key idea, this idea that the neural representations of Luke Skywalker and Yoda and Darth Vader might overlap to some extent. That's going to link those concepts in our semantic knowledge structure. In the previous lesson on semantic memory, we learned about this idea that perhaps the Tiger 1 at Zoo 1 and Tiger 2 at Zoo 2, those different episodic memories can be transformed into a more schematic, semanticized version of Tiger at the Zoo due to overlapping neural representations in the cortex. So this is how episodes can turn into sort of conceptual relationships to the extent that there might be overlapping aspects of a neural representation. Those overlapping aspects can be the basis for forming concepts and categorical relationships. We saw in the case of then going on to learn about the tiger and the cheetah, two different animals, but to the extent that they share an overlapping neural representation, that those common neural elements can be the basis of a larger category like big cats. So in summary, then, we can think of concept cells as an important sort of conceptual tool in understanding how episodic memories might be transformed into semantic memories, how we can build up a store of knowledge about the world because our brains are able to represent people, for example, in a sparse fashion, and then we can quickly add new information, connect up new information to these sparse representations of, say, Jennifer Aniston or Halle Berry, and therefore make associations in quick order, which is how we learn episodically in our lives, and then eventually consolidate that information into the semantic memory network up in the cortex.